Hi everyone, my name is Sally and I'm a mixed media artist in Australia. The first art subscription box for 2024 has arrived. UPCRATE number 53, so let's open it. Okie dokie. Ooh, already. Look at this cute sticker. Is it a sticker? I love these. You don't usually get a big sticker like this. It's usually like a sheet with a few smaller stickers on them. I see watercolors. Winsor & Newton. Sorry, the sun is so bright this morning. So hopefully I'm not too in the shadows. Indigo and cadmium red pale hue. They just popped out of the package, so let's open this up and see what else we've got. All right, wow. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 Winsor & Newton watercolors. I actually haven't used Winsor & Newton watercolors before, and I've heard nothing but amazing things. So I'm very keen to play with these. We also have a white gouache, which is perfect because this is probably my most used gouache shade, and it's always good to do your highlights in gouache because it's more matte and opaque, so it works well with watercolor. And we have a little brush, the number 3 round brush. And like I do with all my UPCRATE videos, when I'm swatching, QR code to jump online and access the full magazine because they've gone digital instead of adding a physical magazine to the boxes now. So I'll list out more information about the supplies in my voiceover when I'm swatching. I personally don't mind the magazine being digital, but I did have a conversation with someone in my comments when they first announced they were going to do this about how it wasn't going to be as accessible for them. So that's something to take into consideration as well. It's not been a great move for everybody, but I try and give as much information as I can. And then we have a full pad of watercolor paper, 300 GSM cold pressed A5 10 sheets. Awesome. I love all these supplies. These are supplies I'm very familiar with that I use regularly. Look at that shadow. I might even have enough room in my watercolor palette to actually add these pans into them. So if I do, I'll show you how to do that as well. Actually, I've got it here because I was painting last night. I have six empty spots, so I might actually take, I've got my neons in here, they will stay, love the neons, but I've got some just regular primaries here that I might take out and add in the Winsor & Newtons. I'll just see what the color selection's like, and I might end up putting the Windsors in here. So we'll experiment with that during this video as well. Also, our artist of the month is Ribi Beztiki. I'm so sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. A freelance artist. I love these illustrations. This is like, I love this neon aesthetic. Really, really beautiful work. Gorgeous. And these stickers, they'll be going straight into my bullet journal. Love them. All right, let's go. First off, I would like to thank my Ko-fi members. Your names are on the screen now. I'm pretty sure, except for the people who are overseas, all the Australians have gotten their zines in the mail now. So that is super exciting. And I want to thank you so much for all your support. If you'd like to check out the tiers and the different awards and memberships, I've got that linked down below. Now, I made a video about my neon watercolors and I'll link that up above so you can watch that. But they came in tubes and I've only ever had either tubed watercolor or watercolor pans that are already set up in a palette. And this is going to sound really silly, but I've always wanted to unwrap these little half pans. And I was so excited to get these little Winsor & Newton half pans so I could just unwrap them because they're just like little treasures. So exciting. I don't know. These little things, they give me joy. So we've got an interesting color palette here. The pigments are phenomenal. I've heard so much about the Winsor & Newton watercolors, but I've never actually used them and they're just divine. So pigmented. That indigo shade up the top there, that last one on the top row, incredible. Stunning. So there was quite a lot of blues in there. We got 4 blue shades. So I took out one of the blues that was in my palette already, and then I had room to fit all my neons, all the Winsor & Newtons, and then a couple that I'd had from a couple of other tubes, and I've still got one spot left there, so stoked. And then I just did some experimenting, adding in the white gouache to make some more pastel opaque colors, and then I mixed some of the watercolor shades together just to experiment with what kind of tones I can get. And one of my favorite little tips, color theory tips, is when you mix complementary colors together, you mute them down and you get some nice really rich sort of browns and grays. So I had to play around with that, mixing the green and the purple together, made that really deep brown. So sometimes when you think you've got a really limited color palette, if you just experiment and mix the shades together, you'll be surprised at just how many shades you can come up with. And we got 8 half pans. I had a look around online just to see what the pricing was, and I found them online for about just under $7 each. So we definitely got our money's worth with this box. Converting it to Australian dollars and that sort of thing, I worked out roughly that the UPCRATE, including shipping, works out to about $45 per box. So just with the watercolors, we've exceeded that. If that's something that you're interested in, or you're wondering about whether it's worth it, because most of the subscription boxes come from overseas, so it can be tricky to sort of figure out if it's worthwhile getting them sent over, because shipping's the killer. But I find it worthwhile. I love unboxing them. I'm a mixed media artist, so I end up using most things. If I ever get pastels, I just give them to my best friend because she works with pastels. I hate them. Yeah, the watercolor and a tube of white gouache is never going to go Australia. I'm always going to use those. So here is me going off with that indigo shade. I just loved it so much. It's gorgeous. So I did use a pencil to sketch, but other than that, I just used the supplies that were in the box. I only used this one brush for the entire painting, and that's the brush that we got, which is a Colibri 8800 size 3. It's a German synthetic fiber brush. I found it very versatile, actually. I could get some really nice fine details from it, but it wasn't too bad working on the larger areas. I just made sure I put tons of water down on the paper, which helped the paint spread a little bit more, and then went in and added the finer details on top, and that seemed to work well for me. So this is a reference that I got from Pinterest, and it was actually a photo of Shelley Duvall. but I intentionally didn't want it to look like a portrait of Shelley Duvall, so I kind of just used the reference to sort of get the angle of the features in, and I changed the features just a little bit. I had seen this picture of a hand, this photo of a hand pointing down with flames coming out of its fingers, and that's that hand you see up in the top left-hand corner, and that sort of sparked this idea. And the prompt word for this box was interaction. And I thought interaction, and I'd sort of had this idea floating around in my head of this, after seeing the hand pointing down with the flame coming from the fingers, of it connecting with a hand reaching up with flames. So that's sort of how I came up with the concept of this piece. So yeah, that's what I did. And I really liked working with this color palette. I probably would have liked having a yellow, and having a yellow, 2 yellows in my palette. I was very, very tempted to just dip in just for a tiny little bit, but I didn't. I just stayed with the 8 Winsor & Newton watercolor shades, because that's the challenge, right? To challenge is making something with the limited supplies. And I find that you come up with more ideas when you sort of have some of those limitations. The paints were just so beautiful to paint with. I think the full range of the Winsor & Newton watercolors is 40 shades, and now I want more. Now I'm going to have to get another empty palette to make a Winsor & Newton palette, because these pigments were just stunning. The only thing I didn't really find successful for this piece was I did this background, this bluey green background, and I really didn't like it. So I was painting this at night, and I did this and I was like, oh, I think I just wrecked it. I just don't think I chose the right colors for the background, but I didn't want it to be all warm. Anyway, I slept on it. I got up in the morning, and just as soon as I saw it in the morning, I just started putting the pink around it, and I totally forgot to film it because I just got up and I was just like, I have to fix this somehow. So I just sort of put the pink around her using the rose permanent shade mixed with the white gouache. And then I did this outline around everything using the purple lake mixed with a little bit of the rose. So it sort of gave me this hot pink outline, and I don't know. The flames don't look like flames, but they look like some kind of magic. So I'm fine with that. Anyway, I don't really do more conceptual type things like this, so it was a little bit of an experiment. And these paints were so divine. They're going to stay in my palette, so I'm definitely going to use them again. Also, this paper, 100% cotton, gorgeous. I put quite a bit of water on the paper and it didn't buckle at all. It held up really nice. And sometimes with a cold pressed watercolor paper, they're quite textured. This just had the perfect amount of texture. Like, it wasn't really, really rough. It was just really easy to work on. This whole set, this whole box worked beautifully together, which was really, really nice. And the gouache is a 20 ml tube, which is quite substantial. I think I have 4 tubes of white gouache in my collection. I've got a really big tube that I bought thinking I was being really smart and buying a really big tube that would last me ages, but I actually really hate it. And I use it only when I'm working in my sketchbook, because I just don't like this particular gouache. So then I have my really good quality smaller tubes for when I'm working on commissions and professional things. So yeah, different gouaches for different occasions. So it's always good to have another one to add in because I use white quite a lot. And I'm definitely going to keep working with these supplies and working on this paper. So I might do another piece for this prompt. I'll have a play around and see. But also, I've only got 3 pages left of my sketchbook. So that's super exciting. So if I can get that finished somehow in the next 7 days with all the other chaos in my life, we'll be doing a sketchbook tour next week, which is super exciting. So these were the supplies. Absolutely loved them. Highly recommend. And here is the finished painting. The Shelley Duvall portrait that's not Shelley Duvall, with the flames that are kind of not really like flames. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. And I'll see you next time.